very issue, whether or not wearing medical face masks with N95 respirators in them, and whether or not wearing cloth masks actually reduce the risk of a virus. So what did each of these studies find? Well, actually, they all found the very same thing. Now, these were studies that looked at N95 respirator masks. That's not the same thing as just hanging a piece of cloth over your face or creating your own mask at home. We'll get to that in a minute. But let's start with the most scientific and medically advanced mask, the N95 respirator mask. These studies, controlled studies, took a look at those N95 respirator masks and whether or not they prevent the spread of virus. Here's what they found. For the study in 2019, among 2,862 randomized participants, 2,371 completed the study and accounted for 5,180 HCW healthcare workers' seasons. Among outpatient healthcare personnel, N95 respirators versus medical masks, as worn by participants in this trial, resulted, get this, in no significant difference in the incidence of laboratory-confirmed influenza. Did you get that? In the 2019 study, there was no significant difference by wearing an N95 respirator mask. It happened again in 2020. Look at this one. A total of 6 RCTs involving 9,171 participants were included. There were no statistically significant differences in preventing laboratory-confirmed influenza, laboratory-confirmed respiratory viral infections, laboratory-confirmed respiratory infection, and influenza-like illness using N95 respirators and surgical masks. By the way, just to be clear, in the 2009, 2010, 2012, 2016, and 2017 studies, they all found the very same thing as the 2019 and 2020 studies. Again, all of these are RTCs, randomized control tests, that are essentially set up to determine whether or not these N95 respirator masks help to prevent the spread of viruses in this setting. And all of these studies found that they do not. Statistically, they do not. Now, there's another study that was also done in 2020. It was done by a group of researchers in Hong Kong. The study was conducted just before COVID-19 hysteria took over, and the results of it were released just a few weeks ago. And once again, those researchers found the very same thing, that there was, in fact, no statistical reason to believe that face masks will protect you, but improper use of a face mask actually puts you at greater risk of contamination. Look at this. In pooled analysis, we found no significant reduction in influenza transmission with the use of face masks. Our systematic review found no significant effect of face masks on transmission of laboratory-confirmed influenza. Proper use of face masks is essential because improper use might increase the risk for transmission. And there is more here, because remember, over and over we've been told something else that's pretty significant. We've been told that you must wear a face mask when you go out, and these N95 respirator masks are obviously the very best thing to wear, right? Which, as we're seeing, is not true, because those N95 respirator masks don't really protect you from transmitting and catching a virus. However, we're also being told that if you don't have an N95 respirator mask, which, by the way, the vast majority of people walking around in face masks do not have, they're not wearing N95 respirator masks. They're just wearing a cloth mask over their face. And what we've been told over and over is that if you just wear a cloth mask over your face, it's better than nothing, so you should do that. And so because of that, we have tens of millions of people walking around with cloth masks on their face. Now get this. In 2015, there was actually a study done taking a look at medical masks versus just a cloth mask and whether or not wearing a cloth mask would protect against the spread of a virus. And what that study found in 2015 should alarm you. Not only does wearing a cloth mask not prevent the spread of a virus, it actually can put you at greater risk for catching the virus. Look at this. According to researchers, this study is the first RCT of cloth masks, and the results caution against the use of cloth masks. This is an important finding to inform occupational health and safety. Moisture retention, reuse of cloth masks, and poor filtration may result in increased risk of infection. Further research is needed to inform the widespread use of cloth masks globally. However, as a precautionary measure, Cloth masks should not be recommended for HCWs, that's healthcare workers, particularly in high-risk situations, and guidelines need to be updated. So for those of you who are watching who are doubting all of this, please show me your RCTs, your randomized control tests that demonstrate how using an N95 respirator mask actually prevents the spread of a virus. I would love to see it. If you're watching this and you say, well, a cloth mask is better than nothing because I heard some reporter on television say so, or I heard some official with the NIH just announce that this is true, please show me the randomized controlled test that verifies that that is true. Because in 2015, that study was done that looked at cloth masks and found not only does it not protect you, it can actually put you at risk. And this is very important information because we are hearing over and over from executives around the country, meaning governors and state leaders and mayors across the country, that you must wear a face mask to protect yourself and to protect others, and to not do so is an act of selfishness. And what they're telling you to do, according to these scientific studies, is to actually put yourself at greater risk. You're not protecting the population, you're actually putting yourself at risk. So we know that with the cloth masks, that study shows that you put yourself at greater risk. And let's go even deeper on this, because the reality is that by wearing an N95 respiratory mask, again, there are other health issues aside from virus that can come up. The reality is wearing a face mask, not just for people with compromised immune systems, but wearing a face mask on a regular basis is unhealthy for you. And there are multiple studies that show that. The N95 mask, which filters out 95% of particles because it impairs respiratory exchange or breathing to a greater degree than a soft mask, and is more often associated with headaches. In one such study, researchers surveyed 212 healthcare workers, 47 males and 165 females, asking about presence of headaches with N95 mask use, duration of the headaches, type of headaches, and if the person had pre-existing headaches. They found that about a third of the workers developed headaches with the use of the mask. Most had pre-existing headaches that were worsened by mask wearing, and 60% required pain medications for relief. As to the cause of the headaches, while straps and pressure from the mask could be causative, the bulk of the evidence points towards hypoxia and or hypercapnia as the cause. That is, a reduction in blood oxygenation or an elevation in blood CO2. It is known that the N95 mask, if worn for hours, can reduce blood oxygenation as much as 20%, which can lead to a loss of consciousness. There's another danger to wearing these masks on a daily basis, especially if you're wearing it for several hours. When a person is infected with a respiratory virus, they will expel some of that virus with each breath. But if you're wearing a mask, especially an N95 mask, you're breathing back in the virus every time you attempt to expel it. Now, as I say these things, there are those who are going to watch and say, well, that's simply not true. That's not true. Wearing a mask is not worse for you, it's better for you. And you're not saying that based on science. You're not saying that based on scientific evidence. You're saying it because it's what you're being told over and over and over again in the media, and by politicians, and by these doctors who are in positions that are political positions, not in medical positions. And over, they're repeating this to you. And by the way, even the biggest doctor of them all in this country, Dr. Anthony Fauci, who keeps talking about this issue, referred to wearing a face mask as mostly symbolic. Listen to his words. He called it mostly symbolic. So why is it that everyone's being required to wear one? And this is what you need to know. The reality is, number one, wearing an N95 face mask does not prevent the spread of virus. Number two, wearing a cloth mask does not prevent the spread of virus, but can lead to a greater chance for infection from a virus. And number three, if you have other health conditions, N95 masks can actually make it worse. Now here's what that all means. It means that this talk of protecting you from a virus with a mask is not based in science. I've shown you the science. It's not based in science or fact. And if it's not, then is wearing a face mask really about protecting the public? Or does it become about submission of the public? Are we being forced to submit merely because politicians want us to? Again, if Fauci calls wearing a face mask mostly symbolic, then let's stop dealing with things that are symbolism and deal in medicine.
It's just a mask, you guys. Don't be a jerk. It's for the greater good. It's just a vaccine, you guys. Don't be a jerk. It's for the greater good. In 4 months, the U.S. was transformed into an obedient socialist country. Government dictated what events are acceptable to attend. Violent protests that instill fear are okay. But church services, family funerals, and patriotic celebrations are dangerous. And you bought it without a fight. Standing in a graduation line is a safety hazard. Small businesses were forced to close, but crowds to support the corporate money machine at Walmart, Lowe's, and Home Depot are okay. Come on, it's just a mask and safety precautions. How about a little hush money? Here's $2,400 that we stole out of your paycheck in the first place. Enjoy. Buy something with it from a big corporation. Cash is dirty. We can't give change. There's a coin shortage. Use your card. In 4 months, they convince you to use a traceable card for everything. In less than 4 months, government closed public schools, then restructured education under the guise of public safety. In less than 4 months, our government demonstrated how easily people assimilate to guidelines that have no scientific premise whatsoever when you are fearful. In less than 4 months, our government successfully instilled fear in a majority of the population in America that allows them to control every aspect of your life, including what you eat, where you go, who you see, and your toilet paper. And the most dangerous and terrifying part, people are not afraid of the government who removed their freedom. They're afraid of their neighbors, family, and friends. And they hate those that won't comply. It's absolutely terrifying to me that so many people don't question authority. They are willing to surrender their critical thinking skills and independence. They just gave up without thinking, without a fight. Do you know what's coming next? It's just a vaccine. Come on, it's for the greater good. Wait until you're told that you can't enter any store or business without proof of the COVID-19 vaccine. Wait until you can't go to public events or get on a plane without proof of receiving the vaccine. Don't think it's possible? Well, you already allowed the government to say when you can go outside, where you're allowed to go, and accepted a new unproven digital education for your kids in the last 100 days. You followed blindly because you were told to do so. You're kidding yourself. Think the mass behavior won't be repeated with a vaccine or whatever the next step is. I don't follow politics. I don't care about that stuff. I don't think about it. 6 million Jewish people were exterminated in Germany because 97% of the population cowered to populist control. Nobody wanted to think about it. It's easier just to ignore it. But that couldn't happen here in America, right? They got you. Without a thought, without a fight. Just like France, just like Russia, just like China. Welcome, comrade.
BLM are attacking all right. Well, good morning. Today is can you believe it, the 23rd of July, 2020. We're closing in on the end of July. Welcome as you come in. I promised I'd be on this morning, but I really shouldn't be. We're getting ready to go do some things. It was a little bit rainy yesterday, a little overcast, and so today is the day we're going to do some things outside. And good morning, everyone, as you come in. So I'll try not to make this long. It's still very, very early here. It's about 6:30 Mountain Time. And of course, the sun, as it progresses through the summer, slowly shortens the days again. So I had to turn a light on in here. So, these lights that are in these trailers, or these travel trailers, are not the best. But I think there's enough light in here to conduct this morning. Okay, well, why talk? Another sip of this. I still bring my caramel coffee with me. Yes, I do. I don't have a whole lot to say about it, other than that I don't give the United States much hope. This insurrection from inside has been allowed to fester for a number of decades. The degradation of our people, the dumbing down of our people. All you got to do is walk around outside, and all these people that now think that wearing a mask is patriotic because that's what President Trump said it was, which is a corruption of the term patriotic as far as I'm concerned. The time for the U.S. government is closing. It is. And that's, when you come out here and you do these things like I'm doing right now, you start to realize what's really important. And the government was supposed to be there. It was chartered to protect us in our rights, and it's been the main dismantler and disrespecter of those rights. So it really doesn't deserve to exist any longer. You look at the corruption, you look at the murders. We've talked about the abortions and the selling of body parts of infants. Can you imagine that Governor Northam of Virginia was able to get away with saying what he said, and there was no action taken against him, not by anybody? They've sown the seeds of their own destruction. Unfortunately, a lot of us will suffer along with it. And that's the bad part. Let me adjust this a little bit. I always forget the camera's actually on this side of I put the screen right in center, and that's not always the best way for it to work, of course. Okay. It's interesting that Antifa and BLM are attacking first these Democratic leftist cities, and I've already explained why they do that. It's because they're given open season there. You saw how the governor and the mayor of Oregon said that, and Chicago mayor, of course, too, said that they don't want Trump to come in there and clean up. This destruction's coming, ladies and gentlemen, and being out here where I am now, I realize that the American people have chosen wickedness and evil across the board, even the Christians, by what they have latched onto and taught, embraced, denying their own kind. Back in the 80s, I stood up for something because I believed that the seed of man, who also has the seed of God in him, was something that should be propagated. And I still feel that way. However, when they get to the point where they're ignoring the truth, ignoring what's plainly in front of them, the sun shining at noonday, they've lost their way, and this goes across the board. We could talk about, the transgender movement and all that, but Trump waving the LGBTQ flag, which I've touched before, all of these are symptoms of a very serious disease. And I could go into the history of the DNA. We could talk about the Garden of Eden, which I've done before. However, the evil side is going to make sure that the serpent's seed is spread further than it was able to get, because God endowed us and imbued us with a survival instinct and a love between the sexes. But unfortunately, that's been undermined to such an extent now, and the reliance on lies from the government. Remember, this is the age of deceit. As Isaiah said, in these days, the world would go away backwards. And Jesus said this would be the time of deception. See that you be not deceived. And again, going back to Isaiah, he said, the people will say, preach unto us things that are easy to understand, prophesy unto us lies. And that's all we have. Where do you get the truth? Well, not outside of you, but you have to be in the right frame of mind, the right frame of heart. And most of the American people don't have it anymore. So, as a result of that, the government's become so corrupt that it's eating itself alive. The very people, just like, you heard Hillary Clinton say that, they trained Al-Qaeda, right? And then Al-Qaeda came against the government. Well, of course they were using it, but they've gone too far this time. And this is going to go real bad. So the real TikTok is here now. You can't depend on Trump. I'm sorry. I'm pessimistic again, but I see where this is. He's still pushing Gavi. He's still pushing the Gates Gavi program. I've got a few notes here. He's just, the Department of Defense has made some deals with Pfizer. What are they doing in this situation, delivering vaccines? You all know that. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. But the evil and the wickedness is so pervasive that, you can even see it in Trump. And I know a lot of people don't want to believe that, but I'm afraid it's just true. I'm out here where I'm not getting much news, so I don't have a whole lot of news to give you. You probably know more about what's going on than I do. But when you, like I said, when you come out and you get in nature and you have time to get away from all of the humdrum and all the lies and all the craziness, you realize society is extremely sick, and the government and the institutions that the government has allowed to perpetuate in this evil is a prime mover of it. So there isn't any way for it to go but down. So I hope you're getting yourselves ready. And as I said the other day, them attacking Trump, I put it out on a Twitter, and then I put it on the community board here, and also on Parler. They have to make Trump still look like the victim as he progresses, pushing the New World Order agenda very, very surreptitiously. It's clandestinely the way he's doing this. Because somebody said, well, you really want Biden? What would have happened if we had HRC? And you've heard me say all this before. Trump has shown himself to be a slow-mo HRC. He's a New York Democrat. He never changed. So this attack on Trump, yeah, they might take him out, as I said the other day. It would probably benefit them too, or they could, do any number of other things to remove him or make it look like he's been removed. Either way, you see what Pelosi's pushing. She's basically saying that we're going to choose China and the international financial masters, as Rich Higgins put it the other day, over America. The problem is that I see, while Trump isn't going for China, what in the world are you doing having them involved in the vaccine situation at all? But that's just part of the play, I think, because Trump is certainly for the international financiers. He's taken loans from Soros. You think he's going to just be able to get away from that? No, I don't think so. We could talk about all the other things. What will make me act? Well, you better ask yourself that question, whoever that was. Oh, Edelson. Yeah, you better ask yourself that question, because it is going to come down to bloodshed. It is. And these people that have set these monsters loose are going to go down with it too. So you just have to be able to ride the tiger, so to speak, ride the storm. I know you know already, Edelson. Yeah, it was a rhetorical question. That's why I asked it. So at any rate, don't be too ecstatic that Trump's moving on the Antifa and the BLM in these cities. He's a little too late. They know what they can get away with now, and I saw a lot of people really cheering him last night, as I checked my feed, saying they're glad he's starting to move. Well, did you see what the Antifa and BLM did in Portland? The feds came out and they were really attacking the protesters, right? And they thought, oh, wow, this will do it, right? What happened last night in Portland? Can anybody tell me what happened to the federal courthouse after the feds flexed their muscles? Anybody tell me? Well, I'll tell you. They burned the courthouse. The feds are outnumbered. They hated people like the Bundys who stood up for their land rights. And they bullied them. But Antifa, they just make a very limited, the feds are making a very limited show of force. It looks good.
Everybody, welcome to the guest segment of the Common Sense
really
Show. Thank you so much for staying with us. We're really glad to be with you.
Whether that's right or wrong doesn't matter. The point is that the government is being shown to be helpless against this insurrection, and that by design. This is Ukraine all over again, but now happening here. Who's in control of the FBI? Well, let's see. Director Wray is supposed to answer to AG Barr, who's supposed to answer to President Trump, right? Well, Trump never did get control of his administration. He relied too much on Kushner and Ivanka, who are themselves Democrats. By the way, as you know, Kushner's writing the Republican Party platform. He's written the DACA deal and the amnesty deal, and probably a bill to rescind part of your Second Amendment. All that's coming if Trump stays in or not. But FBI Wray did something the other day, and it wasn't just hiring the Rosenstein, the attorney from Rosenstein's law firm, to become the general counsel of the FBI. Guess what else he did? He promoted the head of the FISA group, Jennifer, I guess her name's Boone, who basically worked on the Steele dossier, pushed it, approved it. And then the other name that we've heard, he promoted Joe Pienka, who helped to cover up the lies of the Flynn interview, which in itself, that whole Flynn thing may be something other than what we think too. It may not be. I really question that now, which brings up the Q thing. You can look at this whole thing that's happened on Twitter and on the social media against the Q movement in a number of different ways. But I'll tell you how I look at it. I look at it that it's another one of those things to make the right, let me rephrase that, to make those who support the American Constitution, first of all, to be sedated, believe that somebody else was going to do all the work and take care of things when they had no such plan to do so, to demoralize you when it fails, and very troubling, the embracing that it's getting from people including those in the Trump campaign, maybe even Trump himself, and from Alex Jones, in my estimation, is a desperate move to try to get followers, to try to hang on to followers, viewers, supporters, etc., at the expense of those who have stood by sheer principle alone. As Alex said, apparently, I have no problem with using Q as an information source, as long as you don't worship it and look at it as a god because you think it's connected to Trump. Use it like you would the New York Times, ABC, Network News, the Corbett Report, but no more than that. But unfortunately, it went too far. And it's set us back. It's made it so that the takedown of the country was just that much easier. Chinese are involved, of course, but that's not anything that should be new to anybody. And why is that? Well, because the Chinese model is what they want for that form of government, is what the New World Order wants to install. The war doesn't change that. The situation, I find it interesting. Some people were saying that with the Chinese burning their documents in Houston, in the Houston Chinese consulate, that's an indication that a war is coming. Well, what did the embassy in D.C. do? Probably not that. There are more things going on here, and you can't trust anybody. And I mean that. That's really all I had this morning, really nothing more. You better have your things together. You better have a plan. You're not going to escape this. None of us are. Good morning, Nancy. How you doing? None of us are going to escape it. Trump talks out of both sides of his mouth. Yes, I can't stand... Of course I can't stand Pelosi or Feinstein. Feinstein said that they're going to make it... they're going to push a bill to make it mandated that everybody wears a mask across the country. We have these, just like we said, Trump gave cover for these governors and mayors to force this mask thing down our throats. And now the Indiana governor is even saying that 8-year-olds, and I think another governor said 5-year-olds have to wear these things. Do you know what that does to their metabolism and to their biology? This is evil. And then they're going to bring these vaccines in, which are going to change your DNA. As I started to say at the beginning of this, the whole situation with the serpent trying to take over mankind in the Garden of Eden, he's now employing the final step. And it's not just to insert his DNA into you, but to change your DNA into his. So I guess I'll just leave it there. It's already been 20 minutes and I got to go get ready. So America's coming down, ladies and gentlemen, one way or the other. Don't think that we're going to get through this intact. We're not. It's going to go local, as I've said for a long time. It's going to be balkanized. The country's going to be balkanized, broken up into pieces. The central government's going to completely fail because it's going to fight against itself and against states, counties, American people who won't stand for too much more of this, but it's going to be too little too late. So I hope you're getting yourselves ready, okay? Please explain your FISA promotions. Not my FISA promotions. FBI Director Wray promoted Jennifer Boone. I think that's how you say her name. I'm probably saying it wrong. She was part of the FISA group that pushed the Steele dossier. So he's just promoted her, and he promoted Joe Bianca, who was involved in lying about Flynn, covering it up. Even if he didn't lie, he was helped cover it up. So the very agencies, the very people that are supposed to protect our republic are the ones who are undermining it and taking it down. Yeah, John Roberts is responsible too. Thanks, Nancy. I appreciate your input. So anyway, I'm going to go enjoy the rest of the day. I'm going to be with family for the next few days still, probably through the weekend. We kind of extended some things. So I'm not going to be getting a whole lot of, I'm probably not going to be getting much news. I check Twitter. I do have a good enough signal where I can check my things, but I don't want to take too much time away from what we're doing. And on top of that, I might do some traveling. The time they're going to restrict our travel here very, very quickly. I hear people say, "Oh, Trump's not mandating the vaccine. Trump's not mandating the masks." What have I talked about? He does it by proxy. He gives them cover. What he should have done is fired Fauci, but he didn't. Oh, he can't do it. He can't do it. Then why did we hire him to do the job? Why are we worried about re-electing him if he can't do it? Oh, he needs more time to get people behind him. No, that's not what's happening. So at any rate, I'm going to probably do a little bit of traveling, and I might do some live streams while I'm traveling. Okay, I might do that. So we'll see. But probably nothing formal for quite a while, if ever again, the way things are going. All right, that's all I got. It's TikTok for the United States, ladies and gentlemen. It's not TikTok for the coup. It's not TikTok for the Chinese infiltrators. They're in control, and they've got all the people in the right places to do it. Mayors, governors, FBI director, people in the DOJ, the Department of State. I mean, Pompeo's out there talking about, nonsense, while the Chinese insurrectionists, backed insurrectionists, who are, of course, the Chinese are backed by deep state here in the U.S., are basically tearing the country apart. And it's going to get worse. Trump's not going to fix anything. Antifa's in a position now where the auxiliaries, the surrogates, the people that step in and do the really bad stuff can take over. Trump conveniently pushed everything down the road so far that there's no way to recover now. No way. God bless you. God bless yours. Keep your eyes on the horizon, ears to the ground. Situational awareness on high. Stay armed at all times. They will come to your home if you've been an activist at all. I'm talking about Antifa at first, and then the government, because they're coming after you too. Like I say, we're being pinched. It's a pincher movement. We're getting hit from underneath by the insurrection. We're getting hit from the sides by criminals, and we're getting hit from the top by government. And they're all against the American people, all of them. I don't care what they say. I'll leave it at that. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you later. Sorry I'm not going through the chat too much. Like I say, I've got to get going. Okay. Be with your loved ones and your family as much as you can. It's going to get tougher in the future. Look what they're doing. They're telling you that you have to wear masks in your house in Florida, not the whole state, just that one county. Broward County, Florida. Wear your masks in your home. They're dehumanizing us, ladies and gentlemen. They're breaking down the human condition, the good parts. They're breaking down our relationships. They're forcing us to do occultic behavior. That's what the masks are. And people laugh at me for that. Well, you don't know anything. If you laugh when I tell you that it's Pavlovian training for the next step, it's obedience training, and it's occultic. If you laugh at that, you really don't know anything about what this world is about and what's happening right now. They're following the orders of the guy, the one that that Bob Dylan said was the big man in charge. He's here. He's already revealed himself to many of the leaders at this point, I am convinced. Be he nothing more than an AI-chipped man or a being from another reality, another dimension, whatever it is, he's here. And it's all downhill from here. The good thing is, if the scriptures are to be believed, and don't forget that they are a playbook for both sides. If you read this thing, you may think this whole thing is nonsense, but you read this thing and you've got to understand that this is a playbook for both sides. I'm going to say one other thing and then I'll go. I've studied Aleister Crowley, 777, Good and Bad Kabbalah. I know where the good Kabbalah came from. It came from the old Hekkelot, which was the manner of prophesying of the prophets and Jesus himself. I don't expect people to understand that, but I will tell you this, that both sides use basically the same initiation rites. It's their point of view. It's their perspective that's different. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you study the Masonic rituals and things like that, you'll understand that the bad guy is a matter of perspective. It's kind of like the statement that one man's terrorist is another man's patriot. Well, that's very much the case in the occult as well. Let me say not the occult. The occult side looks at Jesus as Lucifer, but not in a good way, the way you would look at Lucifer. They look at Jesus and God as being the bad guy. While on our side, we look at Lucifer, the devil, as the bad side. Do you get my drift here? They do think Jesus is Lucifer, by the way, but not in a different way. I think you understand what I'm saying. I hope you do. In other words, if a Luciferian group was doing an initiation rite and they had the bad guy, that bad guy would be Yahweh. Okay? He would be in the place of Lucifer in our initiations. Okay? And a lot of you will say, well, all of those are bad. Well, Jesus said that there were mysteries, and only his disciples were able to get his mysteries because he was going to teach them. So there are mysteries. There are. It's how they're used and what they're used for that matter. So at any rate, we're in a lot of trouble, and it's not going to get better, ladies and gentlemen. The good side. I pray, I hope that this thing is right. Depending upon your perspective, I hope this is right. I have the faith that it is. That it's going to be that God fixes this thing in the end, because none of us certainly can. And that the serpent's head will indeed be crushed. But we have to pull out of this system. There's no be that God fixes this thing in the end, because none of us certainly can. And that the serpent's head will indeed be crushed. But we have to pull out of this system. There's no other way now. There is no other way. They're not going to let you go to grocery stores. They're not going to let you drive. They're not going to let you travel. That's why I'm going to do a little traveling while I can. You're not going to have a job unless you get the DNA altering injection to put the mark of the beast in you. It's not just a nanotech. It's not just so they can read it. They want to change you into the seed of the serpent, so that if his seed from the beginning hasn't gotten into you, because of the generative processes in the different groups of people. If it hasn't taken hold of you, they want to make sure that it does now. Blessed is he who comes to the 1,260 days. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. I'll talk to you later out here.
And we're glad you're listening to us on all our various outlets, from podcast to YouTube to the website to various radio stations, networks. It's amazing where we're all playing, and we really have a vast and wide audience. And I'm constantly hearing from people, oh, Dave, I heard you on this station. I didn't even know we were on that station. So welcome. Really glad to be with you. We have an interesting show. We have Wrecker on, and you know Wrecker. He's done federal law enforcement work, a veteran, has given us unbelievable insight into what's going on today with Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and Chaz, CHOP, Portland. I mean, we're going to get into some of that too. But we have been chasing down a story jointly, and it has to do with Jupiter. And I have to tell you, from my perspective, I have never had so much trouble running down a story on Jupiter. And I've even had a personal encounter with Jupiter this last week, where we were looking for a comet in our northwestern sky, and we glanced over and said, man, that star is bright, and figured out, hey, that's Jupiter. And the luminosity of Jupiter has just jumped off the charts, and we're going to be getting into that here, what's going on with Jupiter, the rumors that are going to Wrecker and me. Some of them seem like they kind of match up. And we're going to talk about the anecdotal stories that we're getting. We don't have any hard research yet, but we're putting this out here as kind of an all call. Some of you out here may have information we'd like to know more. Dave Hodges at thecommonsenseshow.com. Before we join Wrecker, we got to pay a couple bills. But I'm going to say this is a bill that you have to pay, and you have to pay this debt forward to your family. If you don't think that food as a weapon is not going to be used and employed as a strategy, you're not paying attention. Food inflation's up over 300%. My wife ran into some meat shortages this week that couples with what she ran into 2 weeks ago. My sister tells me she's getting the same problem. It's happening, people, and there's going to be a time where you're not even going to be able to get storable food. So right now, you need to jump on board and go to preparewithdave.com. And what's there? Well, you've got the 4-week special that's $100 reduced in price. So people are buying 20, 30, 40, 80, 100 of these things. You're kidding. No, because people realize that we're in trouble and they're getting food. Now, listen, you're going to want to listen later in the week, because I'm going to have Bob Griswold on who's going to tell you how to hide your resources, because people will come and take it from you. But right now you need to worry about acquiring it. And we'll teach you later in the week how to hide it. So go to preparewithdave.com. And if you need food, you need water, and we have the best water filtration system in the world. The research is at waterwithdave.com. You can look it up, read for yourself, and they're offering their product for 40% off. So you've got the food with preparewithdave.com, you got the water with waterwithdave.com, and now we have Wrecker, and we're going to be talking about Jupiter. And let me say this as an aside. Before I ever got into this business, because I was dragged into it when McCain tried to steal my property and that of 300 of my neighbors in rural Arizona, and he didn't want to compensate us for our property, my favorite hobby was astrophysics, quantum physics. And I would read everything, devour everything. I listened to everything Richard Hoagland would ever say on Coast to Coast. And I was really into this. This is something that, although I don't have a degree in this, I feel like I've got a practical degree in this, because I've read, I think, just about all there is to read. And Jupiter is coming at us in a hyperdimensional quantum physics model, and there could be some really strange things going on out there. And Wrecker and I have been comparing notes for the last couple days, and there ain't a lot to compare. So we're going to share anecdotal stories. We're going to talk about the theory, what could be going on, and then we're hopeful that will stimulate people to come forward. Wrecker, welcome to the show. This is kind of an off the beaten path kind of interview we're going to do, but I think this is going to be fascinating.
Hey, Dave, thanks for having me back. Yeah, anything that can take us off the planet, the mayhem going on right now, is good for me. I'm a huge fan of anything else that could be off of this planet. that maybe they're not going through the same crisis we are. But yeah, Jupiter. Let's get into it. I've been seeing a lot of various reports through the internet and whatever we can get from that. The substantial. Good luck. But I've heard that Jupiter's been struck by an asteroid or a meteorite, or it's having some very dramatic events that something's happening on its surface or within the gaseous cloud that surrounds it, and it may be throwing a debris field at us. What do you hear?
Well, I'm kind of getting the same thing, and as I mentioned, we were out in our backyard, and we're in rural Arizona with no street lights, so we don't get the light pollution that people get in the cities, and we can see things that people don't see. So we're looking for this comet in a different part of the sky, and then we noticed Jupiter, and my wife and I were saying, my gosh, look how bright that is. Yeah, this is really out of character, and the luminosity had gone up like in 2 or 3 days, just dramatically. And then I started getting the rumors, people sending me emails, making cryptic comments on YouTube and on my website, and they were saying things like, Jupiter's out of its orbital plane, Jupiter has been struck, where it's causing the asteroid belt to move, and we're going to be going through a debris field. And that's the general gist of what I've been told, but I don't have any quantifiable proof to throw in front of this.
Yeah, unfortunately, neither do I. But I would say if there's anyone that's listening, if you happen to be a part of some function in a college where you actually have a large telescope that you can look at and you can find Jupiter, which should be pretty easy for you. My take is that if there's something wrong with the orbit or with the axis of that planet, we should see it within its moons. At least, Titan or one of the other moons should be not in the same location. And we should see the debris field. Every day the Earth is hit by small meteorites, comets, whatever you want to call them. And thankfully, God put this protective barrier around us called an atmosphere, which everything burns up in safely for the most part. But if we're going through a large debris field, well, there's a chance something may get through. But if something gets through, I don't know where it's going to land. I don't think anyone knows where it's going to land. And I don't think anyone's going to tell us once they do know at the same time. Dave, we've seen this played out in how many Hollywood fictional movies? There's an asteroid coming, so we got to call Bruce Willis and his band of heroes to go and put a nuke on it, or
Yeah.
all this great. It makes for great television, but we don't have the know-how, the technology, the manpower, or just the resources in general to knock an asteroid off of its trajectory. If the Earth is going to be hit, it's going to get hit. Go ahead.
I'm not so sure. I think with 99% of the Earth's technology, you're correct. This is where I get into my fun stuff. As you know, Nikola Tesla, he used zero-point energy on New Year's Eve 1899 to light up the Capitol Hill area in Denver, 75 miles away from where he was in Colorado Springs. No wires, no nothing. And it was zero-point energy. And then the electrification of America had started after Edison, and all the industrialists were getting behind the power companies and this and that, and they said, we'll put a meter on it, make some money. And Tesla told Westinghouse, you don't need to have a meter. We can do this for nothing. And, he was a little naive. He didn't realize, the game was about making money, not about making people happy and secure. And they ostracized him as the darling scientist of the elite. So he goes to work for the Navy, invents radar, sonar, blah, 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 the Philadelphia experiment, dies 1943. The FBI shows up, takes all his files, still classified today. And this is I don't think you even know this about me. It's in print. But I was friends with Vance Davis, former ex-NSA, and Bill Pollock, contract agency. I did a lot of Air Force intel work. And we had hooked up with some people who had good technology, this technology. We hooked up with Ken Lay from Enron, and we think this was what caused Ken Lay to take a dive, because they came after him, and he wasn't guilty of anything. They just did not want zero-point energy out. We actually had detailed plans in the San Luis Valley of Colorado to build a 0-point energy field where everyone would have free energy for anything they wanted, including the beginnings of the experimental internet. This is before the internet was formally released. And Ken Lay was all behind it. And he said one time in a conference call I was in, well, we better have our dead man switches in order because these bastards are sure going to come after us. And they did, and I believe he suffered the same fate as Epstein. He did not commit suicide. He had too many dead man switches. He bugged out, just like Epstein did, to keep him quiet. So I've been down this road. And, Wrecker, I don't think I've ever told you this, have I?
No, I don't think so. But,
No.
Dave, you mean to tell me that there may be special access programs somewhere up in space that we don't know about?
Well, we know that there's geosynchrotic space platforms 24,000 miles out from the Earth. Now, what exactly their mission is, it's clouded mystery, and a lot of people I've talked to in Intel are not exactly sure. And I know someone in the space program. I know someone prominently in the space program, and he doesn't know. And if he knew and couldn't tell me, he would tell me. But we touched this technology, and the elite doesn't want it. So here's what happened, Wrecker. After World War II and the death of Tesla, they made a decision to bifurcate science. Three-dimensional, Newtonian, simple physics, no extra dimensional effects, okay, no time travel possibility, nothing. That would be the science that would be taught to most people. To the very elite and the upper-level university programs that prepare people to go to work for DARPA and so forth, they would do the quantum physics with multiple dimensions, multiple effects, and time travel is a possibility. And this is where Steve gets into the Stargates thing, and I won't go off on that so much. But interestingly, he's doing another documentary on this. Can't wait. So this is something that absorbed me personally for years and years and years. And whenever I would meet someone who identified as a quantum physicist, I could have a 3 or 4 hour conversation. And they were kind of amazed. They go, Dave, you have a background in psychology and research. How do you know all this? Habit. This is my hobby. And so I really engrossed myself in this. And I'm telling you, Wrecker, there are 2 levels of science. Now, quantum physics is beginning to meet Newtonian 3-dimensional physics. And we have movies that are kind of predictive programming to show that. The TV series Stargate SG-1 was one of those shows. Steve Quayle and I both agree that was predictive programming to get people used to what is coming eventually. And so when we say we don't have the ability to take an asteroid off path, sorry to be so long-winded on this, but that's not true. It's true for most of our, shall we say, most of the planet with their 3-dimensional physics technology. It's not true if you've mastered quantum physics and the gravitational grids that run across our planet and through the solar system as well as the universe. You could move asteroids. The story is that I'm getting is we're going to move through a debris field, and it could be an extinction level event, and it's Jupiter's disturbance that are going to push asteroid debris particles towards us, and we'll get hit multiple times. See, like if an asteroid were going to hit the Earth, I've been told you really don't want to shoot a missile at it and break it up because then you'll have 10 times more damage. You're better off taking one big hit, hoping you survive. But we're going to get the little hits from what I've been told from people that say that we're going to go through a debris field in September, between September and March of next year.
Yeah, see, and I can't even begin to pretend to know what you know, but I understand enough from certain programs that I'm aware of that, you know, within GSO, Geosync Orbit, we have plenty of space trash and debris that's up there that luckily deflects a lot of the smaller stuff. But if there was something large enough with enough mass, it would displace it with just the energy itself as it's coming in towards our atmosphere. Once it hits our atmosphere and it explodes over, hopefully, it would still make one heck of a mess. But if it actually had impact, we could be looking at biblical proportion tidal waves. We could be looking at what we've seen in Revelations as wormwood and the seas turning bitter. You know, the Bible predicts that, a quarter of life in the sea is going to die. A quarter of life on the planet within the earth is going to die on land. So depending on how many different things we get hit with, I know in Revelations there's at least 2 or 3 large hits that we take. So I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying as the public, we're not going to know. We have so many things that are in orbit that are pointed back down at us that are used for weapons that we very rarely turn them and point them outward where the more serious weapons are being hurled at us. Things like this, like the asteroid belt. You can't find it out there very much, and not because it's very hush-hush, but the science is hard to pinpoint. So if you don't even have the science down, you're not even going to push it out to the public. And that's where you have agencies like NASA who try to solve these problems. Unfortunately, I hope that NASA and Russia and China and maybe India, who have the biggest space agencies, go also with Norway. Maybe they're all talking. Hopefully they are. Hopefully there is a plan. But me personally, I don't think there's any plan out there that can stop all of it. Maybe one of them, but you can't stop all of them if they're coming this way.
Well, I think with the right technology, it's possible. The problem is, here's how I see it. Let's put it this way. If the proper technology is not brought to bear, you're totally correct. And there'd be reasons not to bring the technology to bear. Because if the technology is in control of globalists, who are really the leaders of that movement, or the descendants of the fallen angels, and Steve and I just did a show on this, and this is what Celeste Salam and I actually got into. And this is what led to a quick interview turnaround with Steve, because I think we're dealing with fallen angel entities. They want to destroy humanity. And of course, what better revenge than to take some asteroid debris and cause all life to end on the earth? That'd be the ultimate revenge against God. I'll go to my NSA friend's training, Vance Davis. He told me this in 1993, that he was taught there was a war out in the cosmos and the bad guys lost, and they came here and tried to destroy humanity by capturing the soul, but they couldn't unlock the history of the soul or how to access it, so they started to try to morph human beings. He's describing transhumanism in 1993 before there was such a term. He told me this personally in 1993 when we got to be friends. And he's right on the money. And I shared this with Steve the other night in the interview, and Steve Quayle said, Dave, that's 100% correct. Now, they want to destroy humanity using this debris field. Here's what's ironic about this. When I have to give Steve credit. I followed Steve Quayle's work on this, and then I started arriving at my own conclusions based on what I was reading in the Bible. But there was a war out there, and the planet Astra between Mars and Jupiter destroyed. That's the asteroid belt. And what poetic revenge than to use the asteroids to destroy the Earth, God's prized creation. I don't think they're going to succeed, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to go through a hell of a bad time.
No, the Bible clearly states we are going to all go through a terrible, terrible time. That's why it's very important that we don't follow the folly doctrine of man, and we follow the words only of God. When it comes to something like this with the, let's say if we do get struck by an asteroid, you talk about pure pandemonium that will happen on this world. I think that may be one of those events, Dave, that you could see the New World Order that George Sr. Spoke about at the UN. What if we had an outside threat from off this planet? He wasn't really always talking about aliens, as everyone likes to hope. It could be something alien of this planet. An asteroid from a different part of the solar system is definitely alien. But there's always a capitalizing event through anything like this. And people are always going to suffer so that the greater good be able to survive. And when it comes to the black science that's out there, that the elite know a certain level of science that the rest of the world is only taught, that's very true.
Well, this is what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yes. But listen, here's why I don't think if this is a plot to destroy humanity, and I think it's very possible. The reason it won't succeed is because we're promised in Revelations that they said if Jesus didn't come back, we'd all perish. But Jesus is coming back for the second time, and we will be saved. And this is why I do not believe that these forces that are basically ruled by Satan will be successful in this endeavor.
No, no. And anyone who believes that, I think, needs to, get back into the Bible. Satan will forever lose, but it does not mean that we won't go through trials and tribulations. And, it could be something, Dave, where they say, hey, a year or two from now, we are going to see a direct impact on Earth. 2 or 3 years from now, a direct impact on Earth. I don't think it would mean tomorrow. I don't think it could mean next month. But until the scientists and the government decides to tell us, no one really knows, do they?
No, September is not that far away. And according here, let me just read this. What I read to you earlier, I think it's worth sharing a few excerpts here. I'll leave the part out where the guy says he walked 7 miles to listen to my show. I don't think I've ever heard that before. And the gentleman says that he was picked up one time when his truck broke down, and this guy was an astrophysicist on the way back to Texas. They were coming out of Colorado on I-25, and he's told by this guy that, and I'll read the verbatim quote here. This was, by the way, Wrecker and I talked on the phone earlier today. He called me when my wife and I were out and about and doing some shopping, and we said, you know what, we need to talk about some of this stuff, so I'll call you, we'll do an interview. And an hour after this is when I get this message, and we were asking about Jupiter, and I go, I don't know that much about Jupiter. Do you know? I don't know much about Jupiter, but the rumors are out there. So this came in an hour after that conversation. So here's what this guy said. He said, the guy offered to give me a ride when we couldn't fix our truck. The thing he was talking about was after seeing with Jupiter, he said that in late 2020 or early 2021, our planet was going to go through a large debris field, and that it would wreak havoc on the planets, and that the Earth was going to be beaten up pretty bad. I asked him if this was an extinction level event, to which he responded, it very well could end up being that. So pretty interesting there that this could be it.
Yeah, and just in case people don't understand what we're talking about with this asteroid belt, in between Jupiter and Mars, the fourth rock from the sun, there's an asteroid belt that circumferences us. It's very large. It's what most people confuse for the stars in the sky, or sometimes these rock-like objects, they call them stars or planetoids, depending on the size of them. So that's what we're talking about. I give credibility to people who just randomly email you things like that, because there's a lot of little words in there that you're looking for. Not how many people just claim to be an astrophysicist? Not too many. And I know Dave well enough; he's not making this story up. So if you're listening and you belong to a telescope club, or you're a sky watcher, whatever, and you can verify any of this, hit up Dave and let him know what you can see, or take pictures if possible, so that the rest of us can know, because we're not getting all the information. And if this is of major importance, we all need to know this.
I agree. There is something that really jumped out at me too, since right before we started this interview, and it's the work of David Michael Scallion. You may not have ever heard of him, but he used to be a guest on the old Art Bell Coast to Coast show. And he used to have these visions, and these visions would so disable him that sometimes he'd go to the hospital. He'd be so disabled. And this is a real story. I mean, I have very good friends who were very close with Art Bell, and this was something that Art Bell stuck by 100%. So what I'm telling you, you can take to the bank. And so David Michael Scallion had these debilitating effects, but he developed a map about what was coming from asteroid strikes. And there was a lady too in Payson, Arizona, which is a community about an hour northeast of Phoenix, and it's up on the Mogollon Rim, so it's high. It's above. It's way up. It's. I think it's probably about 6,000 feet of elevation, where Phoenix is around 400. Now, both of these people, Lori Toy, that's her name, Lori Toy. This was back in the 90s. They both had these maps, and I've seen them, and they used to be out on the net in the early days. and they showed water and where it would end up. And if you lived in Aspen, you were going to have beachfront property. Phoenix was going to be flooded out, and you'd be safe in Payson. And that was Lori's vision. David Michael Scallion had something very, very similar. He talked about, in some areas it wouldn't go as far inland. He talked about huge refugee camps in Yuma, and a year ago we practiced huge refugee camp in Yuma. I thought that was interesting. And they both had these maps that showed the terrible effects. Let me share with you something I saw too on one of the information channels on the net. I forget which one. An asteroid hits by the Canary Islands. It's a half a mile wide. Within 6 hours, a 1,500-foot wall of water hits the East Coast. That's how serious this is, Ricker.
Yeah, those were old. There's also old Navy maps that were given to various naval commanders throughout the fleet.
That's right.
That also were in possession of that. And the Ozarks is also one of the highest places where people who are high-ranking that retire from the Navy live at. And supposedly, and I can't verify this, is just things that I've been told over a period of years, but that was why they were going there. I remember when I was in the military, I got told that, and I thought it was a bunch of BS until I actually started seeing the maps. And then I gotta sit there and go, well, is this real? Is this fake? I'm seeing so many of them. Why would they seem to, make all this out to be fiction? So I think there's a lot of validity to this. Like I said, I'm not an astrophysicist or a cosmologist or astrologist. I don't know. I'm a shooter, so this is a new episode for me.
Well, some of the effects, just let me share a couple because this is dramatic. The Mississippi River changed the way it was flowing. It becomes so wide that the nation is effectively cut in half. Massive earthquakes out of the New Madre fault line in the mid part of the United States. And coastlines, vast coastlines, just disappear. And see, this water isn't just 1,500 feet when it hits. It works its way into the tributaries and actually causes rivers to reverse, like from the west coast, because everything, west of the Continental Divide, which runs through Colorado, New Mexico, if you're on the other side of that divide, all the rivers flow to the Pacific, and on the other side, it flows to the Atlantic. Well, that gets reversed because of this. The effects are just uncannily bad, but here's the thing that no one ever talks about. And I had, I talked to Richard Hoagland, and I told Richard, I said, I want you to talk to Art, who talks to these guys, and ask him, what about food production, crop production, about clean water, drinkable water? What are we going to do? And then I got the word back and said, that was a great question. No one was really talking about it at the time. They were so overwhelmed by these maps and the dramatic effects that basically your growing seasons would be over except in a few places, and famine and dirty water would be the two major causes of death.
Well, to push that much salt water inland, you're going to kill a huge crop of fish that a lot of people who, like me, grew up on the rivers, we depend on that. And, that source of drinking water. Also, if it gets into the water table, it could possibly pollute the entire water table. So, water could very scarcely be the next thing that a war comes up over, fresh water.
You are right on the money with that, because when they had the Gulf oil spill, some of the oil got into the water table, and it caused massive sinkholes throughout Louisiana. It took down their salt domes, and so you're absolutely right. And this was on a more minor scale than this would be with these massive hits.
Well, think about this too. Let's look at it from a military standpoint. Where do you place most of your military bases?
On the coast.
On the coast. For what reason?
Defense.
Rapid response and protection. Yeah. Rapid response and protection. They're gone. Those installations are gone. Unless our fleets can float or surf, let's say that, unless our fleets can surf, even after that, they may be beached inland a couple thousand miles. When Katrina hit, Rita, Ivan, all these various hurricanes that hit the Gulf, it wasn't uncommon to find a tanker sometimes 200 to 300 yards off the beach, and just laying there, and there's almost no way to get it out. My uncle was actually part of a crew that had to go out there and try and drag some of these boats back into the Gulf. So, and those weren't, those were very, very small surges. They weren't tidal waves. They were just storm surges. A tidal wave like that, it would literally destroy everything. And unfortunately, I say unfortunately, but this is stuff that I like talking about, because you have to really think very deeply about the effects that this would change, not just on our normal day-to-day scale, but it'll destroy our military, destroy the economy. Hey, power grid's done. Your power grid's gone. Within America, you have 3 power grids. You have the West Coast, East Coast, you have Texas. If any one of those on the West Coast or East Coast is affected, it affects the other. So if the West Coast gets obliterated, the East Coast doesn't have power. Texas would be the only one. But more than likely, Texas is going to end up getting flooded just as well. So, these are things that would hyper dramatically change the way we would live day by day. People ain't going back to school after that one. You're not going back to your normal job after that one. Good luck on farming. It would be one of those doomsday-like events that would literally have to form a new world government in order to pull everything together, to rally everyone together, to pool all the resources, and then somebody's got to control it. And it won't be a council. It'll be one man. And it's events like this that will happen before the Antichrist comes on scene. These events will happen before the Antichrist comes on scene. And here we are talking about them today. It's not a far cry for us to say that, just randomly out of the sky, a large rock is going to hit and change the way we live as a society, as a world society. It could very possibly happen at any moment because things penetrate our atmosphere all the time and we're not following it. We find new asteroids all the time. I used to follow the asteroids every now and then, and it's funny to see NASA go, oh, look, there's one that we're tracking, and 3 or 4 just came in the atmosphere that they never saw. So our satellites, as great and as high-tech as they are, you can't see everything. You can't catch everything.
No, and what's interesting, too, to tie into this? The Jesuits built Mount Graham, Mount Lemmon in Arizona. Do you know about that? You know about the Vatican telescope?
Well, of course. Well,
I think this is what it was created for.
Well, if you look at it, what the Vatican says, I believe it's called Satan. Isn't that what they named it? Or Lucifer? They call
Lucifer,
it
yeah, they call it
telescope.
Lucifer, right.
Yeah, and in their mission statement, they're looking for life that's not on Earth. Yeah. Oh, good luck with that, gents.
I would baptize aliens, is what the Pope said.
Yeah, baptize them. I'll baptize them in a 5-gallon bucket. But these guys, they build equipment like this for a reason. They have the money pulled into stuff like this for a reason. They could have put that anywhere on Earth, but instead, I believe it's Navajo, they put it right on a ancient Stargate mountain, where the Native American, the First Nations people that are there claim, hey, you built that right on our most holiest mountain. What do you mean the most holiest mountain? Well, that's where the gods come through at. Oh, well, isn't that funny? And if you recall, Steve Quayle and Dr. Tom Horn, they actually made a film about that together. And I believe they also wrote a book together on that. And part of their investigation, they were actually up there and talking to these scientists who were very accommodating to them. And that they said, once all the UFOs clear the sky, then we can really see everything. And I always wanted to be there just to say, can you say that one more time? When the UFOs clear the skies? What do you mean? So, yeah, there's so many funny things that are found at sites like this that no one has permission to go to. It's obviously a SAP, a special access program. And as much as the Vatican wants to say that they run it for their cathedral purposes, the Vatican is a government. It is a kingdom. The Vatican is a kingdom. Their king is the Pope. So this is a government-run program, a special access government-ran program on our soil. So that means that we agree to that. There's a joint venture here. We're both looking for something, and we're not telling the public, right?
Well, I would agree. We're not telling the public, and for good reason, because the end game is controlled by Lucifer, and that includes the extinction of humanity. So, of course, they'd keep that quiet.
Yeah, I don't think it'll stay quiet for long. I think, and unfortunately, I hate to tie it into stuff like this, but as crazy as the atmosphere is above the earth, right now on the earth, it's getting even more crazier. And I think the build-up to the elections, the build-up of what's going to happen after the elections, we're going to see all kinds of crazy stuff that we've never seen before. You know, to quote Steve Quayle, the word normal is not going to be viewed the same.
Yeah, Steve
what we're
said
seeing
that
right now.
Yeah, Steve said that at Branson. Yeah. Remember back in 19?
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Or
I was on stage with him when he said it. Paul Begley, and I were on stage, and Steve turned to me and said, "We'll never be using the word normal again." And here, what's our favorite term today for COVID-19 lockdowns? It's the new normal. And Steve was so on the money.
Yeah. So, tip of the hat to Steve Quayle. The man is truly gifted, and you know, it's one reason why he's been a mentor of mine for so long, and I've learned so much from him. But you know, I can't even begin to fathom the depths of his knowledge. But I can tell you this much: he is right. The word normal has been thrown out of the textbook. It's probably been replaced by something that doesn't have white privilege on it. I want to say that things will ease up and slow back down, and this is just politics, you know, because I hear people saying that. It's not just politics. There's more than just this going on. Could it be that the world is getting into a frenzy and we're trying to get the whole world under the New World Order right now as fast as possible, and Trump's in the way because we got to deflect the asteroid? Maybe. I mean, that's a really far shot. Either way, it's an evil organization. But I believe there's something much more to this. I just don't know what.
Oh, I think the forces of the planet are lining up to do war. And I don't necessarily mean it's going to be confined to China, Russia, U.S., European Union kind of stuff. I'm talking the spiritual forces.
Oh, yes, sir.
I think old empires are going to be realigning. I'm seeing evidence of it now. Every time I look at the news now, Wrecker, I see realignment of alliances. I'll give you an example. One just happened today. Trump issued an executive order, and he said, we are no longer giving trading privileges to Hong Kong because they're under the control of China. This is a half a step towards breaking off diplomatic relations, which is usually a precursor for war.
Yeah, I don't understand the strategic grounds that we just gave up for that, but this is what I see, just studying the history of all this. I think the United States of America and the people who run it, not the citizens, but the people who run it, are trying to bring us back to a colonial-like pre-kingdom. I think they're trying to make us into our own kingdom, like what we separated from Britain, because everything we're doing is very imperialistic. You know, we have bases scattered all throughout the world right now. We have multiple wars on multiple fronts, not just on the ground, but in space and in cyberspace and in the economy. You know, so we have so many different little wars going on right now. It's hard to keep track of. But the politicians are definitely trying to navigate this country into a collision with China. Every day you turn on the news and China has done something else wrong. And I am not a fan of China. I don't like the Communist Chinese Party. I I do not align myself with communists or Marxists or Leninists or whatever socialistic crap they want to talk about. I believe in, rugged individualism. I believe in the spirit that was once America, the spirit of freedom. Get out and, carve a piece of property out into the woods, and you go do you. Just leave everyone else alone. That's the way I wish it would have stayed, but obviously the politicians didn't. They have to keep this level of control. And since I'm already on this tirade, I wanted to talk to you about something that I've been dwelling on for a while, and I want to see what you think. We constantly look at the left as the bad party, the bad guys, because they have the Democrats and the socialists and then the communists. Now we have the Marxists, and now we have the Antifa. We got the domestic terrorists, and they align with people that don't really align with the machinations that once was America. But what happens whenever we completely target one party and we just dang near take them off the ballot because they're obviously radical, obviously against everything that we shouldn't be doing. They are for it. If you ever give too much control to a government, let's hypothetical, if you give too much power and control to a government, you can potentially be expecting for that power that government has to not be given back to you, the people, and to then be used against you for safety and security. One of those little things Thomas Jefferson warned us about. Let's talk about something. Let's talk about the right hook that no one may see coming. And we must be careful not to give all the power to the right. Now, between the Democrats and the Republicans, I don't trust either one of them because they're both politicians. To me, politicians are about like lawyers. They're good enough to field sandbags, and that's about it. I don't trust them. Their job is to market themselves and the people who pay them to speak. And most of the time, it's lies. They haven't given us anything that we've been asking them to do. Heck, I still can't even walk around with my suppressor because it's still deemed some sort of dangerous object. But out in Europe, a suppressor for a rifle or a pistol is considered the same item as a flashlight. So, there's a reason why we can't have access to those pieces of weaponry, and it's not a weapon.
Wasn't me calling, but it is me calling now. Hello, my friend, Red Eye Crow. 1-5 in Cape Cod, calling you. Break.
Well, so I got something. Let us not forget, it was 9/11 that changed this country. The Patriot Act and every unconstitutional act that was enacted since has set forth a foundation that has only been built upon by both parties to usurp power from the people and exert unconstitutional control through the lines of quote-unquote safety and security, turn the American public, the republic, back into a kingdom and under authoritarian control. Let us not forget, there was a unanimous vote by both parties to send our military into Afghanistan and Iraq and several other military operations around the world that to this day are still going on. Thousands of our men and women were lost in a senseless war that we could hardly prove who did what. Yes, there was intelligence citing that the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and others wanted to hurt America or destroy it entirely or plot to kill people. That is not unusual. All right, that's not unusual. There are multitude of threats out there trying to do that and always have been. All right, but so did Russia, and so did the other communist sympathizers. But we didn't lead an all-out campaign against them for it. Don't you think that Russia and China, North Korea, with all their weaponry, advanced weaponry that could actually meet us toe-to-toe on a battlefield, don't you think that's more of a threat with the types of weapons that they have and the types of threats that they give us than Al-Qaeda or Taliban living in the caves in Pakistan and Afghanistan?
That makes sense to me, yes.
Yeah, And still to this day, and I've been to Iraq 3 times, I can tell you this much. There were a lot of Republicans and Democrats who got really wealthy off of the blood that was spilt on that land.
Yeah.
Okay, have a fun.
And a lot of
So
it came from
I get-
Take care, 25, 158.
And remember, both parties have contributed with trillions in debt that we, the people, are expected to pay. Not them. We are. And both parties are attempting control over us and our economy now with this entire COVID-19 lockdown. Here we go again. We're going to start the lockdown procedures again. Dave, you run this country into the ground and you put people in a compromising position. You damn well better expect some bad behavior to come out of it. Like what we're seeing right now in Portland. Like what we're seeing right now in Seattle. Name a state that doesn't have conflict. Alaska. Okay. Maybe. But there is conflict in every state. And unfortunately, it's in most Democratic states and most Democratic cities. President Trump cited that last week. How come most of the problems are in Democratic states and Democratic cities? Well, probably because there's been a history of these problems, and they're not going to be resolved even if you put a Republican in power there. You know why? Because people compromise. Politicians compromise. They compromise because of dollars. I want to say that I trust my congressmen who are out there doing what they can for their constituents, but I just can't anymore. I just can't. I want to say that I trust that the government for which we stand for stands for us, but it doesn't. It stopped that a long time ago. And not just because Obama came. It stopped that before Obama. It was that way with Bush. It was that way with Clinton. It was that way with Daddy Bush. To me, I think it's been that way since JFK was shot. This country has been in a downfall, and it's precipitated where we are at. It's become the man, the number one man that has to be removed. Let me ask you this much, Dave. If he was such a problem, if Donald Trump was such a piece of crap, if he was such a terrible president, but yet he aligned with the left, like what so many people want to say, this is all part of the plan, or this QAnonymous, trust the plan. I don't trust the plan. You know why? Because I went through with the plan 3 times. 3 times I went through with the plan going to war, and I almost became crippled and almost died because of it. So I don't trust the plan. That plan made a lot of wealthy people wealthier. But if Trump was part of this plan, why are they doing everything they can to blackmail the guy? Why are they doing everything they can to sue the guy, to scare him, to scare his family, to riot in all the cities and then blame it on Trump? Apparently now racism was invented by Trump. The economy being destroyed. Trillions of dollars to our economy? Yes, he did. I'm not happy about that. But ladies and gentlemen, there ain't nothing you can do about it. The presidents are going to continue to do that until we don't have a president. So there's no way around this vicious circle within our politics. But I promise you, if you don't vote, and maybe this is just a reach out in faith, but if you don't vote come November 8th, and we put Joe Biden, sleepy Joe Biden, creepy Joe Biden into office, this country is done. It's done with. And I don't see how that could even happen, because unless Joe comes out of his basement, he's not going to win the presidency. But if you look at all the polls, I was just listening to Chris Wallace interview President Trump. And it was funny because President Trump was tearing Chris Wallace up. Every poll that he showed, Biden's winning. In your heart of hearts, Dave, do you honestly think Biden's winning?
No, I don't. Not
I
even
think
close.
I think he has such a cognitive decline. Trump did a great one. He doesn't even know he's alive.
I hadn't heard that. That's good.
Yeah, we have such a gangster president. Look, I like Trump. he's not the president I wanted, but he's the president we got. And as long as he's backing Jesus, as long as he's backing the cops and the military, the working man, as long as he's still trying to help our farmers, our economy, and defend us from enemies without and within, and he's not cowering down, I have to vote for the guy.
No.
You know, I may not agree with everything, but I have to vote for the guy. You know, I'm not saying it's a sales pitch, but if you've never voted before and you never thought it was a problem, stop and take a look around.
You're right.
Maybe your vote will finally contribute to something, but be careful when you go to the polls. This is going to be a dangerous year.
Mass casualty events. Yep. And Wrecker, on that note, we're just about out of time. This has been really a stream of consciousness interview, but man, has this been fascinating. I could do this for another hour. Unfortunately, we're up against the clock. We're going to follow up. We're going to follow up. In fact, I think we need to take up where we're leaving off here, because people are going to have to outvote the fraudsters, no question. On that note, Wrecker, we got to say goodnight. We got to go in 3, 2, 1. Thanks for joining us, my friend.
Dave, thank you.
Take care.
A lot of us
It's just a mask, you guys. Don't be a jerk. It's for the greater good. It's just a vaccine, you guys. Don't be a jerk. It's for the greater good. In 4 months, the U.S. was transformed into an obedient socialist country. Government dictated what events are acceptable to attend. Violent protests that instill fear are okay. But church services, family funerals, and patriotic celebrations are dangerous. And you bought it without a fight. Standing in a graduation line is a safety hazard. Small businesses were forced to close, but crowds to support the corporate money machine at Walmart, Lowe's, and Home Depot are okay. Come on! It's just a mask. And safety precautions. How about a little hush money? Here's $2,400 that we stole out of your paycheck in the first place. Enjoy. Buy something with it from a big corporation. Cash is dirty. We can't give change. There's a coin shortage. Use your card. In 4 months, they convince you to use a traceable card for everything. In less than 4 months, government closed public schools, then restructured education under the guise of public safety. In less than 4 months, our government demonstrated how easily people assimilate to guidelines that have no scientific premise whatsoever when you are fearful. In less than 4 months, our government successfully instilled fear in a majority of the population in America that allows them to control every aspect of your life, including what you eat, where you go, who you see, and your toilet paper. And the most dangerous and terrifying part, people are not afraid of the government who removed their freedom. They're afraid of their neighbors, family, and friends. And they hate those that won't comply. People don't question authority.
You just lose condition. Tell them to your penny.
And in
Break it.
they just gave up without thinking, without a fight. Do you know what's coming next? It's just a vaccine. Come on, it's for the greater good. Wait until you're told that you can't enter any store or business without proof of the COVID.
Right here, right now, man. I just want to ease down, man. Let you know you got a little bit of Mother Nature, man. I ain't got no great big numbers on you, man.
Possible? Well, you already allowed the government to say when you can go outside, where you're allowed to go, and accepted a new unproven digital education for your kids in the last
Blanket, what's going on there, Captain Big and man? Hey, Blanket, what's going on with your badge up, Captain Big? Good morning time to you, Blanket 25, bracket. Hey, Blanket, you got it going on up in this Captain. That's what up. Look at y'all. But good morning, Ty T, right back. Hey, DX Blanket, I just want to roll in there and say good evening. Good morning, Ty T, man. No diggity, no doubt about it. DX Blanket 25 with the high five in the sky. Let's ride, bracket. Hey, Blanket, I'm going to lean back on this Captain Big and sit back and drink on this Captain Big 40 weight. But I will bump it down later. DX Blanket, your little homie in the corn, got down. Bye. Getting that bracket. We were hot just Captain Big but it's nice out there now. I ain't gonna lie, it feels real Captain Big good out there. 8704. You take it easy, take care, I'm gonna lean back on this Captain Big or 25 and the horns of Iowa stepping in the clear, you hear? Good day.
Gentlemen, prepare to defend yourselves.